So in one of my previous videos, I gave my critique of neoclassical economics, and I want to touch on one of the points I made there in a little bit more detail. I talked about the Cartesian dualism of neoclassical economics in seeing the economy as something disembodied, um, basically as separate from nature. And I want to argue that just as we need to understand consciousness as embodied, so too do we need to understand the products of consciousness, or the noosphere, as Chardin called it, as embodied and utterly dependent upon the biosphere and the physiosphere. And so one of the lead dissenting voices against this whole dualism is a guy named Herman Daly, who's one of the leading figures of what's known as ecological economics. And if you want a good resource from, I recommend this 1989 book that he co-wrote with John B. Cobb, who, the full disclosure, happens to be my grandfather. But I guess the starting point of neoclassical economics is the idea of natural capital. The idea is that nature provides all these services for nothing, and like oxygen production, carbon cycling, protecting against erosion, creating nutrients and fuel, and all the stuff that we think of as just sort of this dead resource that only gains its value when we add labor to it. And so he wants to say that no, nature is actually like an active participant in the economy, and we need to value when doing like cost-benefit analysis, we need to value her services as if she were an economic actor, so that such that when we say drain a wetland or cut down a forest to make room for a housing development, we take into account what we're giving up in order to achieve those things, because it may not be worth the price. There is a great opportunity cost to those kinds of things. And so another consequence of this sort of disembodied idea of the economy is the notion of infinite growth. If the economy isn't dependent upon nature, then, well, hey, it can grow indefinitely and we'll all be richer. This is to the point that many economists think growth is the solution to everything. That if we're facing some that if there's any wealth inequality, don't redistribute the wealth. We'll just grow our way out of it. Or if there's environmental problems, no problem. We'll just grow our way out of those problems so that we have the wealth to face them. And so but in a world where nature is embodied and has biophysical limits, then infinite growth is impossible. And in fact, long before we reach those biophysical limits, we'll reach an optimum point at which growth is no longer economic. And, in Herman Daly coins the term uneconomic growth for growth that is actually negative. Like if there's an increase in crime, that will contribute to the GDP, because there'll be all this money spent on policing and the justice system, and all the people having to replace their stolen items and stuff. But clearly, we wouldn't consider this an increase in quality of life. So one of the things that needs to be reformed is the GDP as a measure of growth. and there are several alternative measures such as the GPI, or Genuine Progress Indicator. Um, but anyway, one of the biggest sources of this delusion we have about wealth is money. Money is supposed to be virtual wealth. It's supposed to represent wealth. Um, but the thing is, money is debt in our current economy. It's something, it's a contract that a certain amount of money is owed to a certain individual. A certain amount of virtual wealth is owed to a certain individual. And debt, unlike wealth, doesn't have to obey the laws of physics. It only obeys the laws of mathematics. And so you can increase the amount of wealth owed from one person to another without increasing the amount of wealth that there is to give. So, in a sense, the increase of debt is really a secret transfer of wealth by creating an obligation to give wealth that doesn't exist. And so I've made my previous monetary reform video talking about that and how you can create a money system that is actually based on wealth by spending new money debt-free on wealth-producing infrastructure. But in any case, another important concept in ecological economics is throughput. And in a lot of economic graphs, you'll see there'll be this sort of circular cycle between households and manufacturers and whatnot. The sort of cycling of goods and services. What they don't put in there is the straight line of throughput, because see, nature is subject to entropy. We take low entropy things like say fuel, and we burn them. We use them up and produce waste, and so there's a stream of stuff going in and out that can't be recovered in the process. That constant throughput requires constant energy inputs, such as from the sun, as well as waste sinks, which is another one of the services that nature provides. And so what this idea leads to is the idea that scale matters. Now, scale is an important concept right now in microeconomics. Any microeconomist will tell you that certain economic activity has an optimum scale beyond which it's uneconomic to grow beyond that. But macroeconomists don't tend to use it that often because they think that the economy itself is subject to no limitations, when in fact it is subject to biophysical limitations, and at a certain point it's uneconomic to grow any further. So what Daly proposes is what's called a steady state economy, in which throughput is kept at a constant rate, that non-renewable resources are not used up any faster than they can be replaced by renewable sources. The renewable sources are not used up faster than they can be replenished. That we not exceed the amount of energy that can be derived from the constant rate of sunlight that comes to our planet. And so we need an economy that's scaled to fit nature's needs. And so the idea of no growth might scare some people because they think that means no progress. But Herman Daly wants to differentiate between growth, which is quantitative, and development, which is qualitative. So yes, there would still be technological innovation, and we could still develop by becoming more efficient, and create things that improve our lives. But we would not want to expand the scale of our economic activities. We want to increase efficiency, not increase the throughput. And so I guess I'll leave it off there. Let me know what you think. Peace.